Hey guys, it's Graham. What's crackin'? Here we are at the end of 2022. The roaring 20s are back for seconds, and we are all along for the ride. You might as well pack a few books and enjoy yourself as you go, right? This year I read a total of 80 books. 11 of them were in print, 69 were on audio. Love that trucker life. 10 books, that is 1/8, made my best of year list. I also had 5 rereads, which included some favorites that my wife and I read to the kids. On top of that, I also made a lot of videos, at least 40 since the year started. And you guys got me over the 1,000 subscriber mark. Thank you for that. The next goal is to get 4,000 watch hours, so I can start getting a few nickels here and there from YouTube. It helps to boost these videos if you guys click the like button and leave a comment, so please tell me what was the best book that you read this year. With that, here's my list. Number 1, Killers of the Flower Moon by David Grann, nonfiction. Like any good American, I really hate the FBI, almost as much as they hate you and me. However, this book shows that early on they were capable of helping people from time to time, and without them, the Osage Indians of Oklahoma would never have gotten some justice. This book covers a lot of history, starting with the westward expansion of the United States, the displacement and forced relocation of the Osage Indians into Oklahoma, the eventual discovery of oil under their reservation, and their subsequent incredible wealth. In the 1920s, a lot of extremely rich Osage members suddenly started dying under very suspicious circumstances, and anyone who looked into it too closely also got killed. J. Edgar Hoover, who needed a win for his Bureau of Investigation, sent a crack team of detectives out to Oklahoma to solve the case covertly. They found the man at the center of it all, and they were able to attach him to dozens of murders. It is a mind-blowing tale, and it's all the worse because it's true. David Grann put together an awesome book that sheds light on a little-known episode in American history. This isn't a happy book, but it is a fair one, and it's a story that deserves to be told. There's supposed to be a movie coming out soon with Jesse Plemons, Brendan Fraser, John Lithgow, Robert De Niro, and I think DiCaprio's in it too. Content warning for language and violence. Number 2, Bust Hell Wide Open by Samuel Mitchum Jr. I did a video on this one the day that I read it. You can check the channel, it was back in January of this year. Nathan Bedford Forrest was a Confederate officer during the Civil War and is mostly known today for being a slave trader who later joined the Ku Klux Klan. While both of those things are true, they're often told out of context. Yes, Forrest's family had been in the slave trade for a long time, and his own personal transformation during the Civil War put him on the side of freedom. He eventually promised the black soldiers under his command that, win or lose, he was going to set them loose at the end of the Civil War. He then joined the KKK when it was a nationalist organization because he wanted the country to unite under one flag instead of the two groups that they saw themselves as. However, when the KKK became more race-centric and hostile towards blacks, he stopped participating because he'd already been down the road where that eventually led. I did not expect to enjoy this book as much as I did. It was great. Content warning for language and violence. Number 3, The Legend of Bass Reeves, sort of fiction, sort of non. It's written by Gary Paulsen. Bass Reeves was a frontier marshal in the 19th century. At the age of 17, he had to go hide in the wild Indian Territory, now modern-day Oklahoma. I swear I didn't mean to start reading all these Oklahoma books right before I moved here. But he had to go there after he killed his master in self-defense. He married twice and raised 2 families and didn't become a lawman until he was 50 years old. His career would last for another 3 decades, during which time he would bring 3,000 criminals to justice, including his own son. Paulsen, who's one of my favorite writers, opens this story with the acknowledgement that a lot of Bass Reeves' early years aren't detailed, and he had to fictionalize some of it in order to write a good story. The facts alone make Bass Reeves worthy of study, but Paulsen's book will really bring the man to life for readers. Number 4, The Western Star by Craig Johnson. It's hard to read an 18-book series and figure out which one is your favorite, but when the 13th Longmire novel wrapped up, I knew I had a real winner on my hands. Walt Longmire is the sheriff of a fictional county in Wyoming. He's a Vietnam veteran who took the job after he got back from the war. Each book in the series is about an individual case that Walt handles, while also advancing the longer arcs about his life as a widower, becoming a grandfather, and dealing with organized crime as it tries to edge into his territory. This book is unique from the others because it tells a dual story. In the present, a criminal is about to be pardoned by the governor and released from prison. Walt is adamantly against this man's release. In the past, Walt is on a train with a bunch of other sheriffs and deputies, one of whom is murdered, and he's trying to figure out who did it. He's also on the outs with his wife, who is pregnant with their first child, and she might end their young marriage. As the past story plays out, we learn that the killer on the train is the prisoner to be pardoned in the present. Bit by bit, the layers of the onion peel back, and we learn just why Walt is so against this man. There's also a surprise punch cliffhanger ending that threw me hard into the next book, something I did not expect this far into the series. The reveal of the villain and why Walt hates him was amazing. Content warning for language, sexuality, and violence. Number 5, Mammon Messiah by Robert Cruzy. It's kind of strange that the second book in a trilogy would make the best of list, considering that I read the first book this year too, and I gave them both 5 stars, but Cruzy outdid himself on Messiah, with a flawless merger of a huge character list, a massive geopolitical scope, detailed astrophysics, and spiritual undertones worthy of its title. In the Mammon series, billionaire engineer Cade Kapoor wants to drag a mineral-rich asteroid into Earth's orbit. The US government gets in his way because greedy leviathans always want their cut of the mining profits. And what follows is a cat-and-mouse game between entrepreneur engineers and statist powermongers for control of the project. When the Federal Reserve ties its value to the success of asteroid mining, and then the asteroid mining fails, the world falls into a new state of depression like never before. And that's just book 1. Book 2 ups the ante with insane stakes. You get to see the real hell of a first world country devolving into third world chaos, the choices that people have to make just to survive, the lengths that powerful people will go to just to keep others down. I can't rave enough about this book, and not just because, full disclosure, I have a short story in the accompanying anthology. Rob Cruzy is one of the best sci-fi authors out there, and he deserves your readership. I'm very stoked to see how it ends. Content warning for language, sexuality, and violence. Number 6, My Life with Charlie Brown by Charles Schulz. This is a great companion book to David Michaelis' 2007 biography, Schulz, which I should review here. Charles Schulz wrote a bunch of letters, essays, and speeches over his career concerning what he learned during the creation and ongoing production of his Peanuts cartoon. It's hard to summarize, as the topics are varied, but he's a deeply spiritual artist and his work meant the world to me as a child. Getting to pull the curtain back and see how he approached his craft was beautiful, moving, and inspiring. I think anyone would love this book. Number 7, 1620 by Peter Wood. This book exists as a direct repudiation of Nicole Hannah-Jones's ahistorical 1619 project, which is built on lies and twisted facts in order to push collectivism and racial hatred in America. Until I read 1620, I was tempted to write something like it myself based on my own research of American history generally and the Mayflower Pilgrims specifically. If you've read the 1619 Project, or you've been exposed to any of the essays, articles, videos, podcasts, or interviews that the New York Times machine has foisted upon the world, then Peter Wood's 1620 is the antidote you deserve. You owe it to yourself to read it. Number 8, The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels by Alex Epstein. I had heard of this book and meant to read it years ago, but never got around to it. Shame, because it's an incredible approach to the energy argument in our time. I had always examined the energy industry through the lens of economics and ecology, not morality. Epstein's case not only blows the lid clean off the evil green movement, he explains why its ongoing efforts are morally untenable, and why petroleum-based energy is significantly cleaner in comparison to wind, solar, or electric projects. Check this one out. Number 9, This Boy and His Mother by Preston Jenkins. Of all the books to make the list this year, I think this one will have interest primarily for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but it is accessible to everyone. Preston Jenkins, a fellow Las Vegas man, grew up in a huge family and served a mission to Asia in the late 2000s. He always identified as gay when he was growing up, but it wasn't the most important thing to him. While he was a missionary, he was sexually abused by his mission companion and subsequently went through years of PTSD without knowing what he was dealing with. He came home before his 2 years were up, which can be a big deal to those not familiar with it, and he took a long time to recover. The story of his recovery is heartbreaking and powerful, and his family, especially his mother, were at the core of it. This is a true account of the love Christ has for his children and the love that a family should aspire to have for each other. Jenkins eventually got to go back and finish his mission in the United States and is now married to a wonderful woman. This book hit me hard, not just because Jenkins and I are members of the same church, or because we both served missions, or because we both grew up in Las Vegas. I've never met him, and he'd have no idea who I am. His story hit me because today, one of the most hotly debated issues is the so-called conflict between the Christian faith and the gay community, fueled by both sides having strong misunderstandings about the other. Jenkins' own story shows what it looks like when you and the people you love are truly committed to living the gospel of Jesus Christ, no matter the challenges you face. He's a powerful example to all of us, and I'm very grateful that he published his story. The words bold and brave get thrown around a lot in our day and age, but they are completely merited in this case. Go read his book. Number 10, The Journal of the First Voyage of Christopher Columbus, written and recorded by the man himself. Columbus's modern-day detractors focus heavily on a single line from his writings, wherein he describes how easily some of the Caribbean natives could be subjugated by European conquerors. What they don't focus on is how often he writes about meeting some of these natives and hiring them to be guides, or treating them with decency. Some of them wanted to help, others wanted nothing to do with his expedition, and many of them fled whenever they saw Europeans coming their way. Columbus was simply describing the sorts of things to his employer, the Spanish crown, that they wanted to know about the place. He advocated for humane treatment of the natives and saw them as children of God, the way most 15th century Europeans did. He also told his men not to steal from the natives' homes. He's a popular punching bag for armchair activists in the 21st century, but sunlight is the best disinfectant, and his first journal is a nice dose of it. I'm looking forward to reading more original sources about his career. Did I say 10 best books? Make that 11. Because there's one here I don't want to neglect, and that is The Mayflower by Rebecca Fraser. It wouldn't be a Graham Bradley video if I didn't mention the Mayflower, right? I didn't think anyone would overtake Nathaniel Philbrick or Caleb H. Johnson as my favorite Mayflower scholars, but Rebecca Fraser has put together an awesome book, and she's now the alpha. She covered the familiar stuff that I knew already, but her choice to focus on Edward Winslow instead of William Bradford made for an entirely new angle to the saga. She also did exhaustive research on the Civil War in England that happened shortly after the Mayflower arrived in America. There was the ensuing interregnum and the financial impact that it had on the Plymouth colony. There are a myriad of complicated interlocking factors responsible for King Philip's War 50-plus years after the Mayflower arrived in Massachusetts, and Rebecca Fraser breaks the entire thing down in a way that is fair and thorough. The Pilgrims weren't conquerors, and the Wampanoags weren't savages. They were two peoples with two different philosophies for their lives, and for a brief period their interests overlapped. They were friends. They helped each other. A whole ton of other problems fell out of the sky later, and that friendship eventually decayed, with tragic results for everyone. You need to read Fraser's book to get the details. And that is it, my friends. I would recommend all 11 of these books to anyone and everyone. I hope you had a great year of reading in 2022. And by all means, share your best books with me in the comments. Check out the links in the description and hit the subscribe button if you're new. Happy New Year, drive safe, see you out there.